it seems fitting that the gentleman who does this presentation is the love of his grandparents' life, and that he is here to honor their legacy, who are pictured here. John Wilkins is a member of our board. He is an affected man. He is great with hugs. He goes around and always checks on me if I look a little stressed and just gives me a hug, and he's always done it. He's a photographer. He has many talents. He's compassionate. He's always checking on young men, on kids. He always is the first to like anybody on Facebook. He's one of the kindest and dearest souls I know. Willing to listen, willing to be there. He's been walking around doing everything he could to make everyone feel at home. But I'll tell you one story about John that won't make him cry. We went to Washington, D.C. one time, and we went up there. He's going to be embarrassed. We went up there to the Genetic Alliance to learn stuff, and this was beginning of John's career to be an advocate for Barth Syndrome, for himself and for the foundation. It was raining, and I was tired, and I wanted to see the monuments. Well, they had all of these little things that go down, so you don't get slapped with water as you're going through with the trolley. And John held it up the whole time, and his little Barth arm was like this. He said, I have Barth syndrome. I'm a little tired, but I want you to see the monuments. But he was that much of a gentleman, and he held it up the whole time. We wore him out, but that's the kind of gentleman that John is he wants us to see everything and see the joy and see the happiness and realize that this is a family. And that's what makes John very special. So I hope I didn't make you cry. Good. This is John Wilkins. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Paula and Woody Varner were my beloved maternal grandparents and the individuals after whom the Varner Award is named. Although my grandfather passed away 8 months before our first meeting as the Barth Syndrome Family Network back in 2000, both of my grandparents have had their hands in the success of BSF since that first meeting 14 years ago. My grandmother gave us our very first donation. She helped fund that first meeting in my grandfather's memory. Since that first meeting, my grandmother has worked quietly behind the scenes for BSF. She created the Woody Varner Science and Medicine Fund to raise money in my grandfather's memory. When my grandmother died 7 years ago in July 2007, we changed the name to the Paula and Woody Varner Science and Medicine Fund. Like Shelley says, my grandmother believed in us before we believed in ourselves. Paula and Woody Varner represent the standard of what this award is for. We work outside our comfort zone if it helps the cause. We treat people with respect, kindness, dignity, love, and compassion, and we never, ever give up. In their honor, the Board of Directors of the Barth Syndrome Foundation has created the Varner Award for Pioneers in Science and Medicine to be presented at our biennial BSF conference. This award is to be given to the scientist or physician whose work has made a positive, lasting impact on Barth syndrome. It was the unanimous decision of the Board of Directors of the Barth Syndrome Foundation that the 2014 Varner Award be presented to Dr. Iris Gonzalez. When the very first Barth family meeting was organized in 2000, which we have pictured here, Dr. Kelley invited us Dr. Iris Gonzalez to attend. Thank goodness she agreed to come, and she even paid her own way. What a gift to us all that she did. Iris has been an important and faithful part of BSF literally since the beginning. Prior to her retirement, Iris worked as a senior research scientist at the Molecular Diagnostic Laboratory at the AI duPont Hospital for Children in Wilmington, Delaware. This is the first molecular diagnostic lab that was approved by CLIA in the United States to conduct the genetic analysis necessary to confirm a diagnosis of Barth syndrome. Iris has made a number of important scientific contributions to BSF over the past 14 years. These include serving as a member of the BSF Scientific and Medical Advisory Board since its inception, using her expertise on the TAS gene and the insights that this gives her in reviewing grants for our BSF research grant program. Iris knows more about the details of the TAS gene than anyone else in the world. Conducting research funded by the very first BSF grant cycle in 2002. In 2005, Iris published an article in the American Journal of Medical Genetics as a result of this research entitled Barth Syndrome, TAS Gene Mutations, mRNAs, and Evolution. Creating and maintaining a comprehensive list of human genetic mutations that have been reported to her by diagnostic labs around the world and/or cited in journal articles. Playing a vital role in keeping communications open between the molecular geneticists and at diagnostic laboratories. Additionally, Iris has been incredibly generous with her expertise and time with our Barth families. She has written a layman's guide to genetics that has been extremely valuable to our Barth families and others. She has also produced some understandable graphics. Who could forget the sweater chart, which we saw yesterday, and is still in use today? She has responded to a number of families who only speak Spanish, and to give them care and one-on-one support when needed, and she follows up with these families without being asked to do so. She has assisted in translating various materials for our Spanish-speaking families, responded to inquiries on the listserv with professional expertise, understandable and non-intimidating terms, and as Shelley says, leaves us all a little bit smarter as a result of her responses. Finally, she has attended every one of our conferences and has presented to the scientists, physicians, and families. She is unfailingly available to any and all of our families. To repeat something my grandmother used to say as a quality she admired in people, Iris enters in, meaning she's always ready to pitch in and lend a hand. Whether it's in the science of Barth syndrome, helping Barth families understand the genetics of Barth syndrome, or putting on a costume and dancing the night away at our Friday night socials, Iris definitely and enthusiastically enters in. As Kate McCurdy stated, Iris is a first-rate scientist with a very human perspective. She operates in the realm of cutting-edge science, but never forgets that the samples she deals with and the mutations she analyzes come from boys and young men who are real people, who are sons, brothers, nephews, grandsons, husbands, and yes, even fathers. Matt Toth says, "You may not know this, but Iris is a wonderful gardener. And just like the careful gardener that she is, she knows the tephazin mutations of each of the boys and young men by heart. And this is not just a play on words. As a genetic scientist, she obviously recalls the tephazin mutations as changes in the amino acids or other alterations in the DNA, but she never forgets that these tephazin mutations are linked to someone very dear." We are very fortunate to have Iris Gonzalez as a part of the BSF scientific team and a member of our Barth family. She is the epitome of a pioneer in science for Barth syndrome, and we are all very grateful for her many contributions, continued expertise, interest, and support. Our BSF would not be where we are today without the help of Iris Gonzalez. She has made a clear, positive, and lasting impact on Barth syndrome, and therefore all of us. Allow me to close by quoting Dr. Richard Kelley. Iris has donated hundreds, if not thousands of hours of her expertise to Barth syndrome and has done more for the understanding of the genetics of Barth syndrome and TAS function than anyone else by at least an order of magnitude. And she still finds time for birds and butterflies. A remarkable scholar indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Barth Syndrome Board of Directors, I am pleased and honored to present Dr. Iris Gonzalez with the Varner Award for Pioneers in Science and Medicine. Here, I can take that from you.
Now, if you just go to the previous picture, there I was wearing my run over by a truck shirt also. Okay. When the first Barth meeting was held in 2000, what did I know about Barth syndrome? Hardly anything. I didn't know anything about what it meant to have Barth. That was number one. I knew how to do things in the lab. I could run the diagnostic. But anyway, the question is, how did I get into this? So I have to backtrack a number of years. In my postdoc work, I worked with ribosomal RNA genes and their evolution. And that led to 17 years of work in the lab where I did everything with my own two hands, but it had no clinical application. So we joked about what clinical application it might have, and for some of the old scientists, I'll tell them later on what we thought it might, jokingly, what it could be, but nothing panned out, of course. So at that point, I couldn't get a grant, and I was going to lose my job. And then Diagnostics came to my rescue. They asked me, would I go into genetic diagnostics? I said, okay. And I was really, really scared, because what did it mean to do diagnostics? To me, diagnostics at that time meant either you give people the good news and say you don't have this, or you give them bad news and say your child is affected. And what I quickly found out was that I was totally wrong in that approach. People who had been searching for an answer for many years suddenly had an answer when I said it's positive. And if I said it's negative, they'd say, now what? So after much uncertainty, families knew what they were facing, and the doctors knew what kind of disease they had to address, what treatments should be used on the kids or not, and it meant something totally different, a change for the families. And the families knew what to watch out for. That was another thing. So the first disease I was to work with was Barth syndrome, about which I didn't know anything. And then others followed. Now, doing the genetic diagnostics is detective work. Sometimes it's very easy to find something because each patient that comes along is a mystery. They come along, there's a sheet, the doctors don't tell us anything about what's wrong with the kid. They just say, check for such and such, do this test. And so everybody's a mystery. Sometimes it's an easy answer. We run the test and we have an easy answer. Sometimes it's not so easy. And sometimes it's totally unclear. And so it means that for some patients, the whole thing becomes a research project that we do kind of on the side. We do everything with our hands. And at that point, and that was something I hadn't expected. Suddenly, those 17 years I had spent on ribosomal RNA genes, doing everything with my own two little hands, I could use those skills to address a genetic disease. And so I'm still a troubleshooter in the lab, to be honest. And so I could apply it not only to figuring out what was going on, but I was going to be able to do something that would benefit people. And not only that, but I got to know the people. And that was putting faces on all those DNA tubes, in a way. And many photos are in our files in the lab, too. So I not only got to see the faces and know everybody, but I got to see how BSF grew and evolved. And it grew and evolved into an incredible partnership between families, doctors, and scientists. And that we're seeing the fruits of all this work, just 14 years. We're seeing the fruits in the way that we now are getting better therapies. We're talking clinical trials. We may get very good therapies. We may get cures that's been even talked about. All that kind of stuff was science fiction a few years ago. And now we're talking about seriously. So that is a big difference. So in the year 2000, I got snagged into this Barth world, which I love, and I won't leave. And the whole thing has become like one big family for me. Now retirement, heck no, that's only on paper. After a few years of just puttering in the garden and doing volunteer in the lab and doing some other activities, I got snagged back in, and I'm doing things with my own two hands once again for quite a bit of time, about 3 days a week. And yes, my garden is doing very, very well. And I want to thank my Barth family again for this, because as I told John, this is my Nobel Prize. Thanks again. And I'm not gonna cry.
Okay. And I'll get the rest of the box to you too.
Yes.
I'll find my paper here. Here it is. Iris Gonzalez and the other doctors are doing amazing work to help find a treatment for Barth syndrome. A lot of this work is funded by the BSF Grant Research Program, which in turn is funded by our generous donors. Please consider making a donation using the envelopes on the table to help continue the work of these wonderful researchers.